Welcome everyone. Thanks for squeezing us in, Gary and the team, Greg, getting our TMI sorted, and me forgetting what USB was. But we've sorted it because Craig ran all the way to ECan to get his computer. A special welcome to Vicky and Craig, our whananga. You may not be Ngāi Tahu, but you're part of us. And particularly Craig's been the chair for the last couple of years, and it's been amazing. And Vicky has, I think we're really going to miss these two.
We are.
It's a chance for us to say thank you too. And the nitrate thing is heated up, and partly because Greenpeace was out there, but also because Vicky moved this motion, and she's going to share a bit about that, and then we might talk about it. Over to you.
Tuatahi, ka nui te mihi kia koutou I tēnei pō, tēnā koe Rosemary, mō tō mihi kia maua, ai mō tō kāranga kia maua hoki, ai tēnei te mihi kia koutou. So yeah, it's awesome to be here. Yeah, it's a bit of a funny time with us not standing again, but we've got our reasons, and yeah, keen to talk about this, and just big acknowledgements to Vicky, who's been real brave. She's the queen of NOM. That's what I've called her for a few years, bringing some really good notices of motion to council, public transport stuff last term, and of course carried that on this term, but with the last notice of motion. And she said sorry to me for putting it in, and I was like, it's all good. Wasn't any worse than or crazier than Nook's ones that went through 3 of them, so we had 4 notices of motions on the last council meeting. That's pretty unheard of, I think. Plus we had, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 deputations, public forums and a petition even, so we had one of everything. So it's a pretty big day, and plus we passed a few really important things like the 2-year agreement refresh with Papatū Runanga. I can't remember what else we did. Biodiversity strategy. Biodiversity strategy, been a big push. And I think that's the first biodiversity strategy under the new MPS for Indigenous biodiversity. No one really mentioned that, but it is, I'm pretty sure, because the rest of them aren't due for like ages. So we just pushed our staff really hard and got it through. So it's not perfect, but at least we got it there and across the line. So yeah, and of course Vicky's work on the $1 million biodiversity rate for Christchurch, Banks Peninsula. That was awesome and amazing, so thanks Vicky. You count for it. All right.
Sorry, I'm just going to put my water here because I'm feeling hot.
Right there. And then I won't block the screen. I probably will for something. So, is that, there we go, for the stand. Oh, I need a bit shorter. That's full enough for this. Here we go. You can tell I've never done a gig in bars doing some singing. So I just wanted to really just go through some of the data which came out in our most recent annual groundwater quality survey, which we do. It's called annual. It's been done every year since 2010. So I'm going to take you through that, but also just start with an overview of what my notice of motion was actually intended to do. I feel like I can put it there. Oh, can you hear me? So you can see the text up on here. So I just took out what turned out to be surprisingly inflammatory language, which I honestly hadn't anticipated. If it makes it easier, call it a crisis. Ultimately, I felt that Environment Canterbury is the organisation that's been in place, setting the regulations and doing the compliance and all those things, that when we say the responsibility is on the drinking water suppliers or the private well owners to sort out their water, and that we do water quality protection, it feels a bit disingenuous, and I just felt uneasy with that. So I just wanted to make sure that Environment Canterbury, as the organisation that has the ability and has the opportunity to really try and drive some of the changes we need to see to reduce the amount of pollution in our groundwater, that we take that leadership role. So that was the intention. And then I said, put two more parts to that, which was essentially next council, because I'm now retiring and I'm not there anymore, going to be there anymore, have a look at what the science is, what the information is, what everybody needs to know to make some really good decisions about how to change things into the future. And then also to have a look at the indicative costs, because I think it's really important that people understand it's not simple taking nitrate out of drinking water, whether it's a private well owner or whether it's a major supplier. It's an additional expense and ongoing maintenance. And it also, for individual well owners, there's a certain degree of knowledge that's needed in order to know how to test your water, where to go for tests, and what's the best kit for you. And there's a cost involved in doing that. So does everyone have that available cash up front and for the ongoing maintenance? So this, I thought it might be tricky for you all to see, so especially from the back. But this map shows where nitrate concentrations are increasing in the wells that we measured. Over the last 10 years, there's either a likely or very likely trend of increasing nitrate concentrations. And so you can see it's pretty well spread across the region, certainly across all the areas with agricultural land practices going on. It's not to say that all those wells are above acceptable value, maximum acceptable value. Just to explain, maximum acceptable value is the drinking water standard in New Zealand, and it's 11.3 milligrams per litre of nitrate nitrogen. So sometimes you see 50 milligrams per litre, that's for nitrate. 11.3 is exactly the same, but it's for nitrate nitrogen, so it depends what you test. And that's the maximum acceptable value in the drinking water standards of New Zealand, and it's exactly the same in Australia and across the European Union. In America, it's 10. So just to say, we're not, it's marginally less, it's not loads less. Maybe it's just easier to remember 10. I don't know.
Especially for Americans.
So just, I didn't say that, Rosemary. I'm in enough trouble already. So just to say, make it really clear, these red dots are not saying all of those are above maximum acceptable value. They're all indicating an increasing trend. This one does show you the proportion of wells in each district that were above maximum acceptable value, i.e. red, or half MAV, or half maximum acceptable value, which is the point in which if you're a drinking water supplier, when you get to half MAV, you then have a higher level of testing you need to do.
That's fine.
You have a higher level of testing you need to do.
Okay, sorry.
We're fine. Yeah.
So I mean, you can see, for example, in Ashburton, 75% of the wells tested were above the maximum acceptable value. That goes right down to depths of 40 metres, even depths of 80 metres. We're picking up above the maximum acceptable value for drinking water. And it's still increasing in wells. Some of them are decreasing as well. Like, to be fair, there are some that are showing a decreasing trend too, and that's good. But the majority across Canterbury, 62% are increasing, and you can see how many. Selwyn, it's about 1 in 3 wells are above half MAV. Like say Ashburton, 75% above half MAV, 1 in 3 above acceptable value. So, anyways, you can see what I'm saying. There's good reason for concern.
So the half MAV is the orange and the red, right? Everything orange and red.
Yeah.
Orange and red is above about 5.5, which is half MAV, which is when additional testing kicks in. It's also when midwives advise pregnant women to switch to bottled water. This is a graph now that I've made using. So these are showing the maximum recorded concentration out of all of the 300 and something wells that were tested in each of the years since 2010. So it's the single highest, the red dots are showing you the single highest recorded nitrate nitrogen value since 2010 out of the 300 odd samples we did right across the region. This year, the highest recorded value was 32 milligrams per litre, so 3 times the maximum acceptable value. And that's not an outlier, that's showing a similar sort of level compared slightly higher than previous years. But that's where some of these wells are getting to.
So that just goes to 2023, so you said this year.
Now, that might be 2020, might be meant to be 2024.
Oh, okay.
Or it's it's 34 milligrams per litre this year. We're always a wee bit behind because they get the data and then they put it all together. But it's not changed substantially. So this one, and so here I want to bring in E. coli. So just to say, E. coli is a really, really dangerous thing to have in your water. It's an indicator, I should say. E. coli is indicative of pathogens, so fecal source pathogens. It's not really the topic for a pub, but anyway. in your water.
Does everyone know what an E. coli is?
It's a species of bacteria, type of
Lives
bacteria.
in all mammals. So we have it, cows have it, dogs have it, and it lives in that feces effectively. And so when that goes out to the environment, it hangs with it. So that's what you test for, and how many, it's done on how many of those little E. coli bugs live in 100 mils of water. That's what the number reflects.
And it's an indicator. So it's not the E. coli specific itself, it's the fact that there are other pathogens. So like Campylobacter, which came with the Havelock North incident, which I'm sure everyone will remember. That's what it's indicating.
And sorry, for drinking water, the standard is 0. It might have gone to 1 actually, but it used to be 0. It might have gone to 1. So there should be no E. coli in a drinking water source, because you don't really want one of them floating around in your cup you're about to drink. For swimming, it's 250 to 550. That's quite a lot for 100 mils of water, like 500 of those things living in there. And for food gathering, they use enterococci, which is a slightly different type of bacteria that survives in seawater. That's why they do it in the seawater. And for shellfish, it's 4 to 14. You should only have 4 to 14 in an area where you gather food. So it just shows you, at that lower end, 0, 4 to 14 is sort of the healthy food, and if you want to swallow the water. But up the other end, it's 250. It used to be 250 was like the red alert. Now it's like the orange alert. They changed the rules a bit. And 550. Yeah, for swimming. Yeah, it is, but it's still a good. No, drinking 0. Like I said, drinking is 0. But it just shows you in our waterways when you're swimming. Yeah, 250 to 550 for recreation, contact recreation. Just that's the range. Yeah. But these will be on 0.
But these aren't showing you the amount of E. coli in samples. This is showing you the proportion of wells, the percentage of those 300 and something wells, or in fact this is broken down by district, the proportion of the tested wells that were above the drinking water standard, both for nitrate, nitrogen, which is the top graph line, and for E. coli, which is the bottom. And you can see that it doesn't always marry up, that the highest nitrogen is therefore also the highest E. coli, but there's sort of a bit of a similarity in that where there's higher nitrogen, nitrate, there is often also maybe more E. coli values.
Sorry, but did you have a correlation coefficient for that?
No, I haven't done anything complicated like that. I'm simply showing, and no, there isn't, and I have looked at it in the past.
Yep.
There is not a straightforward link between nitrate, nitrogen and E. coli. But what you can see here is, so for example, in the OTOP area, in the most recent year, almost about 1 in 3 of the wells sampled in the, OTOP, Orari, Temuka,
or Padi order.
There we are. So that area down in South Canterbury, that's got 1 in 3 wells picked up E. coli. In Ashburton, they've got around 1 in 4, and then 1 in 3 wells is above MAV. You can see that we've got issues. So what I'm basically trying to say is I don't want to diminish the E. coli. So to say, she's just called a nitrate emergency, but what about E. coli? Yeah, E. coli is important too. Let's have a conversation about it all. Absolutely. Now this just shows the change in cow numbers in Canterbury since 1990, from 1990 to 2022. This is off Stats NZ. I'm not going to quibble over a few 100,000 one way or the other. You can see that there has been, I put a little red tick, you can hopefully see that there's quite a change in that time. beef cattle in Canterbury, I haven't put it on here, but I added it up. And so Canterbury's gone from having about 0.4 million or 400,000 cows back in 1990, including the beef and the dairy. And then in 2022, there were 1.8 million. I think I got that right. I think that's right. Total cows, that's right, yes. 1.3 dairy and 1.8 million, including the beef. So that's a lot of extra nitrogen. In other areas, other types of agriculture may well be the key issue. I'm not saying that other agriculture doesn't come with elevated nitrogen, but I think it's also a bit disingenuous to say that we had arable farming in the past in Canterbury and that's really bad and that puts in loads of nitrogen. All of the agricultural sectors have improved their practices to reduce the nitrate loading from their activities. So, you know, it's not necessarily I'll just switch it all to something else and then it'll be fine. That's not necessarily the case. But cows, because they pee and they leave a concentrated nitrogen pee patch, are a particular issue because you can't manage that very well. The winter happens, the grass slows down in its growth, rainfall comes, it washes through. So that's why you see these big spikes with the weather, and it can vary and fluctuate really quite a lot, even just between days. And so it's a really clear signature that there is that input. And then I just wanted to flag climate change. So we have our plans and our planning framework. I think our most recent survey really shows that 2024 annual groundwater quality survey, and the data that I'm seeing, we're not changing fast enough. So there is agricultural practice changing, yes. There are plans that require them to change. That plan is like the minimum standard. It just sets like a level playing field and it sets a minimum standard. That standard is not enough. It's really clear. Unfortunately, planning takes ages and ages and ages. And so I'm really hoping and appealing, if there's any rural people listening, there needs to be more voluntary action. Recognise what is being shown here and figure out how you can make change. Climate change is going to drive more nitrate and more E. coli through the system. Extended periods of dry weather and drought, followed by high rainfall, that is a factor to drive more faster. We haven't got that factored into our plans, which already are not working, or not working enough. Sorry, just to clarify before anyone takes me out of context. We are doing lots, but we're not doing enough. So then I just wanted to flag solutions. That's what I'm asking for, is to have a look at solutions. There's catchment groups is a thing that's really sort of seeing a bit of a zeitgeist at the moment. Really important, really constructive, really helpful. We need to do lots more of that and support and be there to help and guide and everything else. There's a number of other things I've put in there. I do think less cows is an important conversation to have. That is a key input. That's why we need additional fertiliser going onto the grounds and so on to keep the grass growing faster. It's sort of, there's a lot of interlink between these different things. So really that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
I'm happy to jump in here about the sort of solutions stuff, because I've been around the trap a bit now, about 25 years in the sort of RMA system, straight out of university and into at Ngāi working on environmental policy and research, and when I think the dairy boom came along, I was still pretty young, but a few great years now. But I remember out at my marae at Taumutu, we actually got Brian Jenkins to come out to the middle because we were quite worried about the spread of dairy farming around out there. And I remember, we were like, we just want to make sure this stream that runs past our marae is going to keep flowing. That's the first thing. And secondly, that it's not going to get too polluted. And he was really quite blunt. He said, well, actually, it's going to get worse, to be honest. And I was like, well, what does he mean? And because I was a bit younger, I didn't quite realise what was coming, and he was talking about the dairy boom that he knew was on its way. So I've been from there, right through all of my career, trying to think about this work, and I did hold a role at Te Rūnanga Naito called the Program Manager Freshwater at one stage, just so you know. And I knew for a while that the issue really is, the way we're doing it obviously is what we're doing on the plains, But obviously the plains is just a lot of gravel. That's the other thing. And we've known that for a long time. Like a lot of the results that Vicky has presented to us was all predicted in the early 2000s. I can't remember the fellow's name, but do you remember the Wicked Waters book? Who was that?
Murray Rogers.
Murray.
Yeah.
Yeah, I met Murray a few times. You know, they were raising this back then. You can go read the book. You know, it was all been raised. And it was really that we were doing activities on those gravels and on the quite leaky soils that were always going to end up through it. And so, in my mind back then, I was thinking, made the comparison to landfills, because leaching out of landfills is a massive issue. I did a project on it at Lincoln, and I was like, well, the only way to actually fully stop this, if we wanted to, and still have all those cows on top, would be to put a rubber bund under every farm in Canterbury. That's true. It's actually true. If we did that, and every farm was made to do that, like they are for landfills, then that would stop it, right? You collect it and then you deal with it. Well, that wasn't going to happen, though, was it? Because that's totally stupid. To dig up the soil and put a rubber thing underneath and put it all back on top. It's never going to happen. But that's what's needed. You need to stop it somehow from getting through the groundwater, because there's no other way to stop it. If you have that activity, and the same would go for intensive horticulture. It would be the same, because it's the Canterbury Plains we're dealing with, which is just like a bit of Swiss cheese or a sieve, and that's what it is. That's what the geology we have. So yeah, that were the sort of ideas I was sort of grappling with, but knowing that was never going to happen. So what else could we do? And I think Vicky's right. Like in the last few weeks, I went down to Glenaby in front of the community meeting down there because of the Waimati situation, where the MAV has been exceeded in their drinking water source on a number of occasions. So I've been wanting to do that for a while, so we finally got down there in front of those people. And I thought it was pretty respectful, to be honest. Like, we presented a lot of data, a lot of information. And afterwards, I've got a few interesting questions. One of the things that came up was there was a feeling that Environment Canterbury's fault, because we had changed their practices from border-type irrigation to spray irrigation, and they felt that had caused the problem, because border-type irrigation, you flood the land and then you dilute things with that flooding. But I said, okay, well, true, that might have happened, but you sort of went along with it. And it is more efficient to have spray irrigation. But in the meantime, did you intensify as well? And then that sort of stopped that line of questioning for a moment. And someone said, good point. And so afterwards, a few of the local irrigation company board members came up to me, and I sort of talked about one of the things on Vicky's slide there, herd homes. I'm a fan of them. I think they are actually part of the solution. They're not the total solution, because none of these are on their own. And one of those people said, yep, they're really good, they're just really expensive. And I said, but what if you collectivise that cost across a catchment and not just made an individual farmer pay for it? What if we did, look, because this is what you do in, and Andrew might know this, in stormwater management in the city here. I've been involved in that consenting process. So we have great people like Ken's here. We do catchment load modelling, right? And so you look at the whole load you've got, and then where's the hot points, and then you go strategically how to treat that. And so you could do that in catchments too. There may be some farms that have particular soils that are just no good. So they might have to be sacrificial farms. So you go, let's collectivise and buy them out across the catchment. And you go do something else, or come and work over here. And then there might be 5 places in that catchment, for example, where you have herd homes. Or there might be 3 places where you do a constructed wetland. I don't know. I'm throwing these ideas out, as well as at the other end of the spectrum, yes, stop. That's at that end. Reduce stock numbers. Reduce your nitrogen and nitrate inputs, your fertiliser inputs. That's another thing, which is already sort of happening through the good management practice and the farm planning stuff that Canterbury's brought in. Right through to the other end, managed aquifer recharge is something that's been done in Ashburton. So that's, you know what that is? So that's basically diluting the pollution by putting more fresh water into the system. So you bring fresh water from somewhere else and you pump it into either the aquifer, and that's called near river, managed aquifer recharge, or near river recharge, which is you put fresh water at the top of a river that's run dry, and you make water run through it again. That's all big engineering stuff. So that's at one end. Yep. Yep. And I'm not an advocate for it. I'm just saying that's a tool, because I actually don't really support diluting pollution, but it is an option. Sorry.
So yeah, just to say on that, so I'm not against managed aquifer recharge in principle, certainly as a short to medium term solution. And it's actually really important for topping up water weather, because this efficient irrigation also draws the groundwater table down, and so that then can cut off some of those like springs and things that are really important for biodiversity. But the problem is, particularly with climate change, we're just not going to have enough fresh water to distribute across the plains, not just to irrigate and grow the grass, but now also to dilute the pollution that's going through the grass. And we just simply will not have enough. Our evapotranspiration rate is going to go up substantially with more windy days, hot days, longer dry periods. The demands on just the status quo for irrigation is already problematic, let alone diluting and pouring water down into the ground.
So if we go back to that's at one end, managed aquifer recharge and all that over here, stopping at this end. Herd homes somewhere around here, constructed wetlands here, bioreactors. Do you know what they are? Bioreactors. So you put a substrate of bark. Nick, do you know any of the things? Do anyone else know what they put in bioreactors? What they put? Bark, wood chip, mussels, shells, and a carbon source, and you try and catch that nutrients as it's going through that system as a sort of vertical system in the ground. Right?
It's like a wetland.
But constructed system,
Constructed.
like a filter in a pool, if you like. So that's what bioreactors are. There's lots of different tools that people have come up with in the last 20, 30 years. And these have been put in place, like out at Waimakiriri, they've got a bioreactor out there in one of the council reserves, and they're testing that to see if it makes a difference. And so if you line all those up, there might be, say, 10 things we could do in any given catchment. And I think that's the conversation we've got to have now. What are they? Can they work? Yes or no? How much do they cost? And how many do you need in a catchment to make a difference to nitrogen reduction? Including the other end, like I said, stopping, reducing. And then, who's going to pay it? Regional council, we could definitely chip in with targeted rates and general rates. Like I'm sure we can do that. We have done that for the managed aquifer recharge in Ashburton. What's that? It's a targeted rate. Yeah, that's right. Targeted rate. That community wanted it, so they got it. And government taxes could come to the party, as they should. A lot more for a whole lot of other things, but I won't go there.
Go there.
Transport. Bridges, anyway, schools, and industry. I think that's the big conversation at the moment, because as you'll know, the regional council's lost its ability to change our rules or to make new plans. So until 2027, there is none of that. But that also opens up an opportunity to say to industry, what are you going to do? Or what are we going to do together? And I think that's the conversation that needs to be had right now. Because obviously this is their industry, it's their livelihood that can disappear as well if it gets way too bad. So the onus is on them, and I'm not saying they haven't done stuff. They have. There's no doubt about it that, and I particularly think in Canterbury you need to be mindful that we're the only regional council that brought in, and Cynthia knows about this, resource consents for farming. That never happened anywhere in the whole country under RMA. We're the first ones to do it. And along with that, the farm plan system and the good management practice system. One of the issues has been in the background is that government policies flip-flop and government rules is flip-flop in the background. Through my career, that's happened. When Mick Smith was the Minister of Environment, he changed the rules and changed the National Objectives Framework, and that made it easier to work effectively. Labor came in with the Freshwater 2020, and that put on a high bar to do new freshwater plans by 2024. Well, it's 2025, people, and none of them have been done. Councils did start. Yeah, councils did start. So the Otago Regional Council was ready to notify their water plan last year. They got stopped by the same thing. We were doing our regional policy statement. And so in November, December last year, the new rule came through from government to say no more plans or whatever they did. We still went for it. Vicky and I voted to carry on and try to get an exemption for the RPS, but that didn't get through. Was it 8A or whatever it was? So that was pretty heartbreaking, because I got back onto council to try to help those plans get through the system, because I knew how important they are, because they set up the next 30 years of aspiration and goal. Andrew knows all about planning. And so that's, and I take that to heart too. I wanted to see that happen, didn't happen. So it's not as if we haven't done anything in Canterbury. And I think the other thing is, our farmers have spent a lot. They have. And we need to acknowledge that. And unfortunately, the rest of the country hasn't followed suit. So they've actually put all their farm plans in place and done all that, and made reductions. And the rest of the country hasn't had to follow suit. And they're in the same market. So I think you can understand that that's an issue. And when the last government, the Labor government, brought in their freshwater farm plans, which was different to our farm environmental plans, slightly different, it did create a bit of anxiety, because everyone's like, oh, do we have to do everything all over again in Canterbury? We've already got something running. It's not perfect, but it's still we're ahead of all you people. And there was anxiety there. And then we tried to make them mesh together, and that's been behind the scenes, trying to make those two systems mesh together. And I think at the moment, what I'm sort of picking up is nothing's happening. I don't know if this government is going to bring in freshwater farm plans at all, or farm environmental plans. I wish they do. I hope they do. But at some point, we're going to have to. So where we got to with the NPS, or the National Policy Statement for Freshwater 2020, was on the right track. It probably just went a bit far for everybody, to be honest, and especially the farming community and industry. They just hate it. But where's the middle ground? Where can we get some movement again? Because we had a bit of love in Canterbury, we did, between 2010 to 2020. We had a bit of love there, and it's all gone. Everyone's retreated to their corners, and they're coming out fighting. And that's not helpful for any of us.
Is that showing in your results, that we did do something for 10 years?
Yeah, well, there is a lag effect too, and you might know about that, but Vicky's probably, I'd actually know about it.
So no, there has been some lag work done, looking at that lag time between pollution coming into the ground and then moving through the system. And some recent work has shown that in some circumstances and in shallower groundwater, you would pick up a change in land practice within about 3 to 5 years. So we should be starting seeing, if we've been applying good management practices and should start to see reductions. But what we're seeing is still these trends up. And so that's why I'm really saying, and I think you have to remember, it's fine to say other parts of New Zealand or whatever, but actually Canterbury has really specific situation and context that means, regardless of what everyone else is doing, and this is where my plea comes in, is see the writing on the wall. You need to do something voluntarily that's more than what you're doing, because it's coming. And that's all I can say.
And I totally support, that's where we're at. So around the council table in the last, especially 6 months, there's been a lot of talk about non-statutory work again, which was happening in the CWMS as well. And because that's all we've got. Like I said, because we can't make rule changes, or plan changes, we've got no ability to regulate, to be honest, other than the compliance of the existing consents we have out there and the farm plans and all that. But we really need to lean on that voluntary, non-statutory space and get into conversations, like I said, with industry, with mana whenua, with government, and communities, and try to come up with solutions. And who's going to pay for it? Where are they going to be put? And that's what I'm interested in. I'm definitely like a practical sort of solutions person. I don't know if it's going to work, but we've got to be willing to give it a go. And good question about has all that work that Canterbury's done made a difference? Well, I think that's what we're saying. We don't know yet. It's still looking pretty bad, people. I've always said we've got to keep doing more. And my intention was, with the new planning framework, I knew that those original plans were never good enough. That's what I felt like. They made a start, but we needed more. But
so
as Vicky said, they take too long.
So if you take that lag that's gone, and it's positive, like you have made a difference, it has made a difference. So isn't that the difference? Isn't that your point of difference, that we've made it work? So let's keep pushing.
Totally, but we haven't had that confirmed yet.
Yeah, you don't know what would happen if that.
So so the question is that if there is things that have happened and we can see that there's been a positive change, isn't that enough?
No, isn't that, is that the start to keep pushing?
Is that start? Yes, exactly. So I think it's clear that making changes does deliver improvements, but in looking at where we're at and the level of nitrate nitrogen in the groundwater, there needs to be more done faster, and there is a choice in there. So the plans have been set up without that degree of urgency that I think was required and that Craig's referred to.
And there's also a difference between what we know on paper and what's actually happening in the environment. So on paper, all the calculations that are done through, overseer is an issue too, because you might have heard about the overseer thing. That's relied on heavily to make all the calculations about nutrient input and outputs. And that's been found to not be that good. I'll say it like that. So we need something like that to help farmers and the regulators work it all out. But that's still on paper, and then you need the actual monitoring results to see is it actually happening in reality. Because it's theoretical, what we're trying to do with planning and regulation and rules, and what's actually happening is important as well. And I'll leave at this point with you. It's pretty crazy that up until the MPS 2020, fish and invertebrates were never monitored or required to be monitored by regional councils. Now that, to me, is pretty crazy. But we meant to do it now, and we are doing it now, but we're on catch-up because we don't have data. I mean, NIWA and stuff have got data, but regional councils don't hold data on macroinvertebrates and fish, especially fish, in rivers and lakes and stuff, right? Because we just didn't have to do it yet.
Kia ora, I'm going to ask Rex just to come in with a fishing question.
No, it's not actually a fishing question. No, surprise, surprise.
Okay.
Ko Rex tōku ingoa. Tēnā kōrua, Craig, Vicky. You might recall, if you're old enough, about 5 years ago, I came and I co-submitted with the Federation of Freshwater Anglers on the nitrate issue, and I came with them because they were the only people that actually had a portable nitrate tester at the time. We brought our data into the staff, and we were brushed off. I collected the data with some well-known members of this group. There was Sam from Waikari and Mike from Victoria University, and myself and Fish and Game. We got a whole lot of North Canterbury data. When we got nowhere there, we went down to Ashburton and set up a stand at the Ashburton Racecourse, and over 50% of the people who brought their water in, particularly those with just 30-metre wells, were over the standard. And it all came, we were getting people there with 17, 18, 19 milligrams per litre. We presented the data to the Ashburton newspapers and they refused to print it. And I think that brings up the issue of, you say, what do we do next? I think we have to actually make more information available to the public. The English didn't have the money to put an advert in the press or whatever. When Greenpeace came along, they got noticed and they duplicated a lot of the data that the English had done. And it got some publicity, but everybody said, oh, bloody Greenpeace again, and they were dismissed by a lot of people. But I think if the data was put out by someone like ECan and put in this advertisement saying these are the figures, you'll know at Taumutu, I believe Freshwater Anglers has been supplying you with data from all the streams around Ellesmere for about a 7 or 8 year period, and it is not good. The other issue, of course, is the fact that the international standard is 11 point something, whereas in fact the Danish study showed that the colorectal cancer threshold was about 3.7, and virtually everybody we tested in Ashburton, at least 90% anyway, was over that 3.7 level. So those people in the Ashburton district were drinking water that the Danish studies showed greatly increased their chance of getting colorectal cancers. And we were told, oh, we have to wait until a parallel study has been done here in New Zealand. It's a bit like the tobacco industry sort of response.
Yeah, we've got the same issue with dust and the impact of crystallise some of the dust.
Yeah, but the information to the wider public is my point.
Yeah.
And that's what facilitated this in a way.
Yeah, so if I just say, so over this last term, I've had, back into the last term, so I left a notice out of the last term and into this one, just in case I didn't get back in. And so that one was about private well testing, which I then brought another one that was the one that you saw the Greenpeace ad about, which was to ask, essentially to get what were very effective nitrate testing. Well, we did through some of the zone committees, so I was on the Selwyn Waihora Zone Committee, and we ran private well owner testing events where we used, essentially as a draw you in card, have a free nitrate test, but it also meant then we could share information about how to look after your well, how to get tests on things like the E. coli, to make sure people understood. We had people come along who knew about what treatment systems and all that sort of thing. So they were really, really well received. They weren't via Greenpeace. They were through our zone committee. It was a zone committee, which is collective. It's collective, and so really well attended and well received. And so I was trying to make sure we got those right across the region. That didn't get supported. The cost to do it didn't get supported by the council, but we have provided much better data or information on our website, and people have got, we've been putting out ads and making sure in particular areas. You wouldn't see it in Christchurch because it's not focused on Christchurch because we have supplied water, but there's been a lot of work gone on to improve understanding around wells and testing and what's what's in the water and knowing how to find out.
Thanks, Vicky. And Lynn, and I know by the looks of Craig saying who's here, there's lots of other people with questions, I'm sure. So now we're...
Can I, sorry, just to add in as well, I've deliberately in this case stayed well away from discussing the Danish study. I'm talking about what is our current drinking water standard of 11.3. For the natural environment, a healthy natural environment is about 1/10 of that, and that's really important as well. But I'm not getting into a debate about the Danish study. We don't need to, because we're at the 11.3 of the agreed World Health Organization standard that's on across many other countries.
And this is where we come back to measuring the health of our invertebrates and fish in water.
Yeah.
Because that's way more important than swimmable.
It's low. It's much lower. But but now we're looking at 11.3 in drinking water. That triggers a conversation, and there's no debate about what's the right limit or level in that. Although what surprised me is that actually there have been some people come out and said, but actually maybe it's not high enough, which is surprising me. But I'm going to stick with the science. Says 11.3.
Good, Lynn.
We have reached the point of slowing down or even stopping new dairy farms, but recently a whole lot more have been approved. What was missing or had changed that allowed those to be approved?
So there was the national environmental standards that were, I think it was 2020 around about, which said no further intensification until after, when it ran up, that rule ran up until the end of 2024. And so from the 1st of January 25, and I got the logic was because our freshwater plans that would, and then you'd know that actually, so it was never intended to say no further intensification anywhere under any circumstances. It was saying, for the moment we know there's some problems, get your plans in place, figure out what you can do, where you're at, and then if there's any capacity for more intensification in some places, it'll be sort of captured within the plans, and you can apply for consents at that point. But instead, we didn't get the plans in place to stop it, and then after the 1st of January, and so our plans enable or are permissive of some additional discharges, which I think is fair to say that probably reflects some of the reductions that have been made by some other farmers. But we know that there's already too much, and so that's where our 2024...
And that's what I understand. Like I said, on paper, when you add up all the resource consensus stuff, there's been reductions on paper, and hopefully in the environment too, but at least on paper, which has created some headroom. That's what I understand, but that's what I've heard, not seen that written anywhere. but I understand that the reductions that have been done within some catchments have created a little bit of space because there was environmental limits put in place, and so consents have come in, and they can't decline them because there's space. That's what I've heard.
Basically, decisions made at staff level, they won't come to council.
They don't have to.
They're not in.
Resource consents don't come to council.
Nick, and then you, Dave.
Thanks. So, great talk, guys. In terms of solutions, I find myself wondering what comes after intensive dairy Canterbury. I mean, even if for no other reason that either at some point, you know, markets are cyclical, nothing lasts forever. We used to do sheep, we used to do construction, we used to do gold mining. Milk's already being synthesised in labs, and MPI has already had a big hooey about, you know, looking into that as coming threat to our economy. I also heard from, you know, one of our fellow candidates in Christchurch South about how he had to sell his farm in Ashburton around 2000 because there wasn't money in sheep and beef, and farms were being sold at a loss. And then along came the irrigation, and now farmers are profitable in the rural sector, so dairy is being done. If we can give the people an alternative for our regional economy, then it's much easier to say, hey, turn off the tap, take off those excess cows and the nitrogen, and do this other thing. You guys have been in the ship. You know, what have you seen out there? Is there any other promising things on the horizon that we could say to people, we could do some of this? Let's diversify.
First of all, I'm not a farmer, so I don't understand that as much. But I think you're on the right track. If we go back 30 years, the Canterbury Plains didn't look the way they do now, did they? And we didn't have, like, you've seen the numbers in terms of cows, 1990 to now. So we have changed the landscape in 30 years, but dramatically. And there's no reason to think that, I agree, that it won't change again.
Of course it will.
And so I agree, we need to be thinking about, and we have in our strategic direction, we actually did put in there about diversifying the landscape, changing land use. But every time we bring that up at council, we do get that put back in our face that we're not farmers, so what do we know? But that is an important conversation, and I agree. Like, example I've got is around whitewater. So I know that obviously lake openings are done to keep the lake down so it doesn't flood farmland, but to be honest, that's what it's for, even though we've got fish and stuff in there now, recently. But that lake's, you know, the Harper, the lagoon, is going to keep rising and falling. There's more water in it because of Central Plains, because we've got Rakaya water and Waimakariri water in the system now. And if you can't open the lake because sea levels are rising on the outside, it's going to start heading inland. That's what it's going to do. And so I've always thought, well, what could those farmers do without us having to buy it all back, because that's the only other solution, but like the rubber thing. What land use could they have around that lake that is allowed to have wet thing? I think there's some, rice. And there has been some actual research done into could rice grow here or climate's changing. So I agree. That's where we need to be thinking, for sure. What are the land uses that people could adapt to, and are they going to be better for our freshwater, etc.? I don't know the answers, but I hope there's people out there doing the research on it and thinking about it.
Because Ken Taylor in the National Science Challenge, that was the whole 5-year science challenge, right? To work out what the best use was for different lands.
It's gone now, the climate challenge. Yes.
Oh, right.
But I don't know, of course, that's not council, but again, that needs to filter in, for sure. The decision makers, to our planners, to the farmers themselves, through industry leaders.
Yeah, so for me, I'd say it absolutely comes down to the farmers to have the information. I know Lincoln University will be doing work on that and some others. So it's ultimately individual choices, but there's data being worked out.
I mean, there's carbon, there's blue-green carbon, there is emerging things, but hey.
There's a shift in orchards as well. There is actually increasing orchards happening at the moment. So there's things changing. But
And then you next.
3 quick comments. Craig mentioned herd homes as a town. I don't know what that means, but I'm guessing that means a way of dairying which reduces the impact on the environment. If that is the case, we have Fonterra selling mega billions worth of product every year, and their shareholders are coining it. I'd suggest, why do they not have to have their shareholder return halved for the next 20 years while herd homes, whatever that means, comes in? They fund for it, they get the money. That's the first point. Second point was a rep invited here this evening from the dairy industry? And I mean somebody with dirt on their hands, not some guy sitting in an office, with all due respect. And my third, and my third comment is, should we as townies be having a water filter jug thing on our bench at home, which I've always scorned. But listening to what you're saying now, maybe we should have.
Have you seen the cost of those water filters? I did some research a couple of years ago. It was for a family of 4 in 2001. It was going to cost around about $2,500 to get the filter, and it cost you about another $1,100 a year to change the filter.
That's
If I just say on the water, in Christchurch, I took my drinking water bottle to the Selwyn Waihora drinking water test event that we did, and it was at 0.6 milligrams per litre. It's not to say that it was so really good, and that's quite typical of the background level if you haven't got it.
So we're all right at present.
But
It's
there's longer term risk potentially. There's more work coming. Our staff are bringing a report on actual testing wells and what they're finding in relation to the modelling, which you may have heard, where there was talk of potentially nitrates coming onto the Waimakariri from the north. So that work's happening, and we'll hear back.
And sorry, herd homes, for people that don't know, is it's a way of housing cows for a certain part of the year. It's not all year, especially when the soil was heavily saturated. And you can collect them in there, you feed them, and they do their stuff, and you collect all that and treat it as you would in a dairy shed or in an urban environment. Collect it and treat it. So there's a way to just stop the worst part of the year where the cows are out in the paddocks doing their thing and they go straight through. So that's what herd homes are, that's the concept of it. But they're being slammed a little bit because people think it's like, factory farming. So that's where it's lost a bit of favour, but they don't have to be like that. Yes, some people might go to that extreme.
Winter grazing.
Yeah, but it's a way to combat winter grazing. It is. And to call herd homes, because that's a more positive term, because cows probably do like it when they're under a bit of cover, you know?
If you want nitrate-free water, harvest rainwater. They do it all over the world. That's your solution. If you want to solve the issue, don't listen to Donald Trump saying, there isn't climate change. We need to grow as many trees as possible. 80% of Aotearoa used to be covered in native forest and wetlands. We've got some great examples, Ahuriri, wetland restoration. We should be restoring native forest and wetland across. We've got irrigation systems to do that. We've got, lots of NGOs starting it. But if you've got serious funding from government internationally, that's the future. And that's when the climate really starts giving us problems. There'll be a desperate rush to invest in all kinds of reforestation, restoration of wetlands. That's the future. It's obvious. It's obvious.
And most of us who watch, if any of us watch Country Calendar, we see some of the growing edge of what farming are doing, and some farmers are doing just that. And we need to somehow find a way of supporting them, and but still challenging the others. Colleen, and then Peter.
I just got two things. One, very quickly, my father was a dairy farmer. I grew up on a dairy farm in West Auckland. He put in a herd farm in Auckland, West Auckland. The cows went into it for the winter months at night. It was wonderful. They loved it. He loved it. The land loved it. So much of what we need to do is to go back to what my dad was doing 50 years ago, 60 years ago.
Sure.
The other thing I want to say is I want to help, and I think that globally and nationally and in every way, I think it's we the people. We have to step up now. And so I'm just wondering if there are mechanisms. I know it wouldn't be a thing. You'd have to do a lot of the awareness raising and get the information out to people. But ECan has been hobbled. We've got a government that won't do anything. Is there any way we could get a third sector where we could actually, as a urban community who care about the farmers and who care about our region and our land and what's, and the health of our waterways, that we could put money into, so that, that solution you said, turn a farm into a wetland. Could we buy one of those dairy farms as a community through some third sector mechanism? I know that they're great CEOs.
And that's what they've done around. They've done that around Taupo and Rotorua. Just taken things out.
I'd say yes. I'd say yes, of course. I think, and what Nick was saying before about the future, like thinking about the future, what could it be? Definitely, that did happen down in Waituna, down in Southland. So through some government funding and the Runanga and the regional council, district councils working together, they did buy the farm. We were looking at that around Waipori, we just never quite got there, and it hasn't happened yet, but it should happen in the future. And same with
Peter?
Oh, well, I was actually at a food security conference yesterday, actually with Colleen, and yeah, I mean, it's the key issue is what the cereal production's gone down in the Canterbury Plains because it's all just about the bottom line, dealing with international markets and international supply, and what we're really losing is local food security through monocultural intensification. And I just wonder, Craig, do you think regional council should play a role in designing agricultural systems to provide regional food security? Because we're losing a huge amount of land around Christchurch now is going into housing, and that land being used as the top 4% of product of land in New Zealand. We're losing local food security.
we did have a presentation to nearly our last council a few days. Yeah. So the food security has been raised a few times. Lan raised it last term as well. And so slowly we're sort of fostering this idea about regional food security strategy or whatever, or food resilience strategy. It's slowly bubbling away. But again, when we sort of bring those ideas up about how do you inform change in land use, we get told we don't know what we're talking about and stuff, and that's a bit hard, but we're trying. I think that's the thing with Colleen as well. We're trying to say that that's what we think needs to happen, but I don't know if you can regulate that. But if you could, cool. But you can't blame people either, and you can't just force people. So we're going to try and find a way.
I think we've also got to find some other voices apart from Federated Farmers and Dairy. One of the examples to me is Greater Otahe in Christchurch here. A group of young people got together and said, why are those residents and ratepayers so against intensification? We need to buy a house. And they organised. They're not party affiliated. And they're now got, the press goes to them for comments. They make submissions. So we need future farming. I think we need to grow that network.
Yeah, there's a really good organisation that's really focused on younger farmers, and not just rural, but like urban people interested in food security and all sorts of things. So they're called Future Farmers. They've got a sort of sustainable future plan or strategy, and yeah, they're great. Excellent. They spoke to us as well. So I'll share the presentations we've had on those issues on my Facebook page. I've been meaning to do that. Really well worth watching. There've been some really interesting discussions, and I think that's the key. That's the key thing, is having these discussions. In terms of food strategy, I think the suggestion's been that would be a good mayoral forum piece of work, because then you do have the districts and the city council all looking at it together, and it is about feeding local people as well as like value add products being sold to export markets and the like, and finding sort of like the most best opportunity to maximise and all those benefits really.
Hey, I think we're going to finish. Provocative. Rod, we're going to finish up.
I like to be provocative. And admittedly, I'm a plant eater, so I don't touch animals or dairy. How many of you are still suckling from your mother? How many of you consume milk or cheese or yogurt from dairy? Why? Because every mammal that's ever been born gets weaned, and once it's weaned, it does not need dairy or any milk from anybody.
We don't live in cities, though.
You don't need it.
But it tastes good.
Thanks, Rod. So changing our own behaviour around what we eat is definitely...
I won't go into the way that we treat cows, which is another thing altogether.
We've got one more question and then we're going to stop.
So, yeah, in Christchurch, we've been drilling for some deeper aquifers. I guess you mentioned there's some research being done, but I was wondering what the current understanding or, I guess, guesses are for the nitrates to reach our deeper aquifers that we draw a lot of water from currently. Like 50 years or...
Oh, you mean the time span?
Yeah, the time
You're
frame.
talking specifically about Christchurch, is that
Just Christchurch as a...
Yeah,
when might Christchurch get to those?
Yeah, I can't. There was some work done for Plan Change 7, and there was modelling work done. and there was predictions looking at the sort of change through modelling of nitrate concentrations, you know, through a whole range of you know, ranges of all the different parameters, and some of the sort of peak concentrations were going to, you know, generally they would go up, and then the plans require reduction, so it would then drop the tail back down again. But some of the effects were going to be out, you know, 100, 200, 300 years from my memory. So the problem is, once it's in those types of deep aquifers, you don't get it back out. And the point for me is with that if you have Christchurch supplying water from those aquifers to the population of Christchurch, even if it only peaks above mouth for 5 years, you've got to find an alternative for that 5 years. You sort of can't go, oh, it's only going to be in 5 years, so we won't worry about it now. So you sort of need to get on top of that. But the modelling predicts one thing. Work is happening to actually do physical investigations now to understand, is that actually a reality? Because models are models, right? So if that work's happening, watch this space next year.
And so we need a lot more research around those sorts of things. And also, I mean, it's not so long ago that they believed that the water in North Canterbury didn't come under the Waimakariri to our aquifer, and it does.
No,
so
that's, no.
It's not?
Sorry, that's what we're saying. That's what I'm saying. The modelling shows
The
that
model
it could.
shows it does. Okay.
It shows that it
But we
no,
need
it
to
shows,
test
show
it.
the model.
Thank
It's a
you.
model, so it shows that it could.
Yep.
And then wells have now been installed on the south side of the Waimakariri
To
to
measure.
actually test and measure to see what's happening. That's a piece of work being reported back on in the next council term. So I get confused where I'm at. Yeah. So I think next year that work will come back and we'll get a clearer
So
picture.
going from modelling to research.
Yeah.
Hey, aren't these two people amazing? I'm sure if you have another question, they're hanging around. But really, thank you for coming. Thanks, Gaz, and for having us here at Smash Palace. Thank you too.